Russian planners might have been salivating at the prospect of a defeated Ukraine, but the geostrategic chessboard has been flipped on its head with one flick of the finger by this country. This is Finland. It's surprising that Russia would feel the need to go code red on account of this peaceful and neighborly country situated to its west. But sharing a long border with Finland has been a double-edged sword for Russia. This border happens to be 830 miles long and runs approximately north to south. Securing it isn't child's play, but since the entire area is covered in thick taiga forest and a thicker sheet of snow with hardly any population, the Kremlin should not be concerned. But instead, the long stretch of largely unpatrollable land between these neighbors has Russia scrambling to find a way to protect its western flank, particularly since it's right next to this Russian city. This is St. Petersburg. Russia's second largest city after Moscow is only a stone's throw away from the Finnish border, more precisely 103 miles. It's home to more than 5.5 million residents, with more than 6.4 million people living in the greater metropolitan region, contributing to nearly 5% of the entire Russian economy. Located on the River Neva at the head of the Gulf of Finland on the Baltic Sea, it happens to be the fourth most populous city in Europe and the most populous city on the Baltic Sea. So Finland is basically sitting right on St. Petersburg's head. For the most part, Russia has been largely unconcerned with any threat due to Finland's proximity. The main reason for this is because of its population. You see, Finland might be blessed geographically in reference to Russia, being positioned perfectly to pose a serious threat to it if it ever needed to. It's not that simple though, because in order to do that, invading countries need a sizable population, something that Finland doesn't have. As of October 2024, Finland's population stood at just over 5.6 million, making up just a smidge of the total world population at 0.07%. That brings it to a rank of 117 in the list of 195 countries. With only 48 people living per square mile despite its large size of over 117,000 square miles, large parts of Finland are sparsely inhabited, with vast stretches of forests and wilderness sweeping the nation. And as this chart here shows, with the population growth rate declining further, there's no chance of the situation reversing anytime in the near future. These are not encouraging figures since the entire population of Finland itself is pretty much equal to that of St. Petersburg alone. On the other hand, Mother Russia's population is almost 145 million, equivalent to 1.77% of the total world's, ranking it number 9 on the global list. These figures mean that in case of a conflict with Russia, Finland would not stand a chance. This disadvantage is nothing new. Finland has lacked the necessary manpower to fully exploit its geographic position and ward off Russia's military and economic might. Unless, of course, it joined forces with another power. Russia is very aware of this fact, which is why it has had a borderline bipolar approach to its relationship with Finland. It's always been a sort of benevolent bully guarding the bloc, doing as it pleases. Beneath the surface, though, Russia has always been wary of Finland augmenting its tiny population and forces through foreign alliances. Basically, it sees Finland fortified by foreign armies as an existential threat to its western border. This perceived danger has compelled Moscow to repeatedly seek control or neutrality over Finland. For Russia, Finland is a vital strategic buffer, and its potential loss to a hostile influence could ignite a zero-sum struggle in the region. And Finland is very much aware of Russia's fears, even though it's tried to mostly remain docile. Incidentally, Finland isn't the only country Russia considers its backyard. In fact, all of the Eastern European states that border it are considered such, with Russia jealously guarding them like its property. Meanwhile, Finland has more or less learned to survive under the shadow of the beast to its east by gluing itself to a policy of non-alignment. It considers the policy crucial to its own survival since it fears it will otherwise be consumed. Both countries have had a checkered history due to their shared need for survival, but through opposing policies. Russia has either pacified its neighbor while preventing it from aligning itself with any hostile foreign powers, and Finland has obliged, mostly. While this mutually beneficial arrangement might have worked for over 200 years, the present geostrategic environment has changed the rules of the game. And it's all because of this country which has tipped the balance. You guessed it. Ukraine, defying the constraints imposed by Russia, faced invasion on February 24, 2022 for its resistance. This devastation in Ukraine ignited a stronger drive in Sweden and Finland to join NATO, transforming a hesitant inclination into a determined push. What Russia intended as a warning to its neighbors basically backfired and propelled these states to secure their safety against similar threats. Notably, just a week after the invasion, Finnish President Sauli Niinisto visited the United States, reportedly with NATO membership high on the agenda. This spelled an impending disaster of epic proportions for Russia, as it could affect its war with Ukraine and essentially redraw Europe's security map. Seeing it unfold, the Kremlin made its position clear years ago. If Finland and Sweden join NATO, there will be hell to pay. At this point, the people of Finland quickly recalled Vladimir Putin's warning from 2016. When we look across the border now, we see a Finn on the other side. If Finland joins NATO, we will see an enemy. Finland's decision to join NATO marked a significant shift from its long-standing policy of neutrality. Historically, Finland maintained a delicate balance with Russia, avoiding alliances that might provoke its powerful neighbor. However, Russia's invasion of Ukraine served as a stark warning, highlighting the potential dangers of remaining unaligned. This aggression prompted Finland to reassess its security strategy, leading to its application for NATO membership. And then, on April 4th, 2023, Finland officially became NATO's 31st member, solidifying its commitment to collective defense. This move underscores Finland's resolve to deter any potential aggression, drawing from its historical experiences of resisting Russian advances. By joining NATO, Finland aimed to enhance its security through collective defense, signaling to Russia that any hostile actions will be met with a unified and formidable response. But wait a second. What's this about historical Russian advances, you say? Well, they're a good starting point to understanding how this move by Finland finally has Russia feeling more checkmated than ever. You're watching another Republic exclusive. Russian dominance. In 1703, this man right here, Peter the Great, built St. Petersburg, a dazzling new capital that showcased Russian ambition. But there was one small problem. Its prime location on the Baltic Sea made it a sitting duck for foreign threats. To protect this gleaming jewel, Russia needed control of the surrounding lands, and that meant eyeing Finland. Back then, Finland wasn't even a country. It was a patchwork of provinces ruled by Sweden, governed from Stockholm. But when Sweden started cozying up to Britain, Russia's anxiety skyrocketed. Suddenly, the idea of British ships using Finnish and Swedish ports to launch attacks on St. Petersburg wasn't just paranoia, it was a real possibility. Hey, are you enjoying the video so far? Show some support by hitting the like button. Also, be sure to subscribe and tap that bell icon so you don't miss the next Republic exclusive. You will not want to miss it. Meanwhile, halfway across Europe, two larger-than-life figures were reshaping the continent. Napoleon Bonaparte and Tsar Alexander I struck a strange friendship in 1807, agreeing to carve up Europe between them. The deal? Russia would force Sweden into Napoleon's economic blockade against Britain, known as the Continental System, and in exchange, Tsar Alexander would get Finland as a shiny new addition to his empire. Then, by 1808, Russian troops were on the move, invading Finland and overpowering Swedish defenses. Sweden, humbled and bruised, retreated into a long era of neutrality, while Finland became a grand duchy under Russian control. So basically, a buffer zone had been created as a result, but Finland's story was far from over. The uneasy peace between Finland and Russia held for a century, until it didn't. After the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, Finland seized the moment to declare independence. This pushed Russia's border uncomfortably close to St. Petersburg once again, and the Soviet Union wasn't having it. When World War II broke out, Stalin saw an opportunity to reclaim the territory he believed was rightfully Russia's. Thus began the Winter War of 1939, a brutal conflict that pitted tiny Finland against the massive Soviet war machine. What followed was nothing short of astonishing. Outnumbered and outgunned, the Finns used ingenuity, grit, and their harsh winter environment to hold off the Red Army. Their ski troops zipped through the forests, leaving Soviet tanks stuck in snowdrifts. It was nothing short of David versus Goliath on ice. But even heroes have their limits. Finland was eventually forced to surrender and concede about 9% of its territory, including the city of Viborg. Still, the world took notice. Tiny Finland had punched way above its weight, exposing Soviet weaknesses in the process for everyone to behold. After the war, Finland found itself between a rock and a hard place, or rather, between the Soviet Union and the rest of Europe. But there was a solution, a strategy that would come to be known as Finlandization. We didn't make this word up. The idea was simple: stay out of major power blocks like NATO or the Warsaw Pact, and keep the Soviet Union happy enough to avoid conflict, all while quietly building connections with the West. And so it was essentially a masterclass in walking a geopolitical tightrope. And guess what? Finland even signed a treaty of friendship with the Soviet Union, promising cooperation while avoiding anything that might look like aggression, but to keep its options slightly open. At the same time, it joined the Nordic Council and later the European Union, proving that neutrality didn't mean isolation from the rest of the world. Finland's balancing act and strategic moves were so successful that they became a case study in international relations. Diving into NATO. Although neutrality seemed to be working, the global geostrategic scene was undergoing a metamorphosis. Eastern Europe was heating up, and as hostilities ramped up between Russia and Ukraine, Finland's nightmares seemed to be coming true. As Russia annexed Crimea, Finland started inching towards deeper integration with the West. Despite having remained outside NATO, Finland had actively cooperated with the alliance, participating in military exercises and even procuring NATO standard weaponry. Acutely aware of the changing environment around it, Finland increased its defense budget exponentially and started revamping its adequate defense to a whole new level. For example, its military expenditure increased to $4.8 billion in 2022 from a paltry $3.7 in 2021. This is a stark contrast to the spending average of $1.8 billion from 1958 to this same period. And then 2023 came along, and Finland set an even higher record, pushing in at $7.35 billion, which brings us to its considerable present-day weapon power. Finland, though small, punches above its weight when it comes to military capabilities. Its army is now equipped with advanced weaponry, including a significant number of Leopard 2 battle tanks, surpassing even Germany's inventory. It also boasts one of Europe's largest artillery arsenals, with approximately 1,500 systems in stock. The country is ever actively modernizing its military. This includes the acquisition of additional K9 Thunder self-propelled howitzers and domestic production of armored vehicles like the Patria Sisupasi. And then there's the Finnish Navy. While relatively small, it's designed to protect Finland's extensive coastline and territorial waters. It consists of a fleet of 20 patrol and coastal combatant ships, various support and landing craft, and specialized vessels such as mine hunters and mine countermeasure ships. The Navy's focus on homeland defense is reflected in its capabilities, particularly in mine warfare. The country's complex coastline, with its numerous islands and varying water depths, is well suited for mine-laying operations. Additionally, the Navy's fast attack craft provide offensive capabilities, enhancing its overall effectiveness. The Finnish Navy is undergoing a significant modernization program. 4 Hamina-class fast attack craft are being upgraded with advanced naval systems to enhance their operational capabilities. Additionally, the Squadron 2020 program is focused on building 4 new Pohjanmaa-class multi-role corvettes. These versatile vessels will be equipped to handle a range of missions, including surface warfare, anti-submarine warfare, and mine warfare. The new corvettes are designed to operate effectively in the harsh conditions of the Baltic Sea, even during the winter months. Which brings us now to the Finnish Air Force, centered around the FA-18 Hornet fleet. It's currently undergoing a significant modernization program, but also, as the Hornets are nearing the end of their service life, the Finnish Ministry of Defense has now selected the Lockheed Martin F-35A Lightning II as their next-generation fighter jet. The F-35, known for its advanced capabilities and stealth technology, is expected to significantly enhance Finland's air defense capabilities. The acquisition plan is scheduled to purchase 64 of the F-35 jets beginning in 2026. And as many other nations around the world invest in them, they're planning for Finnish air superiority for decades to come. This substantial investment of $10 billion will put their air force in line with advanced capabilities of other NATO countries. Now we come to the crux of what makes tiny Finland so formidable: its fighters. Finland's military strength lies not only in its advanced weaponry, but also in its highly trained and adaptable fighting force. The harsh Finnish climate has forged a military well-suited for winter warfare, with units like the Jaeger Brigade excelling in Arctic combat. Finnish troops, including the elite UTI Special Forces, regularly train with foreign militaries, sharing their expertise in winter warfare. With a large reserve force, modern equipment, and specialized tactics, Finland is a formidable military power in the region. So the country is pretty battle-ready and prepared to take on its enemies. But can it defend itself against a monolith like Russia? That's the real question here. The answer, however, is that it's not likely, especially if it remains alone like it has historically. Remember its population limitation? Well, that still holds true for today. Finland can only make a dent in its historical enemy unless its forces are augmented by the combined strength of some of the world's most powerful countries through NATO. Judging by recent developments, joining NATO wasn't really a choice anymore, it had become a necessity. And its population is quickly agreeing with that conclusion. Initially, after Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea, Finland remained cautious about joining NATO to avoid antagonizing Moscow. Back then, public support for NATO membership was particularly low, at only 22%. The limited nature of the 2014 attack didn't significantly raise alarm in Helsinki. However, everything shifted in February of 2022. That's when Russia's large-scale invasion of Ukraine, involving 200,000 troops, demonstrated a renewed willingness to use military force in Europe. This dramatically changed Finland's risk assessment. Like Ukraine, they had a history of Russian invasion, while lacking NATO protection and camaraderie. It was enough aggression demonstrated by Moscow to raise serious concerns that Finland, despite the seeming unlikelihood, could be next on Putin's list. And with Finland's risk assessment evolving, so has its public opinion. The case for NATO. When the idea was coming about, Finland joining NATO would make a bad situation worse for Russia, which would find a huge threat looming on its very doorstep. This power move would also expose Russia's northwestern flank while elongating it. You see, it would create a continuous NATO frontier from the Arctic Ocean to the Baltic Sea, nearly completely surrounding the region. It would park NATO forces right at the lengthy Finnish-Russian border, perilously close to St. Petersburg. Russia's control will be limited to its immediate vicinity, the Gulf of Finland and the Kaliningrad exclave. But Russia's concerns extend beyond just Finland's increased military might at the border. If Finland were to join the alliance, it would put some of Russia's most important defense structures directly in the line of fire. Let's take a look at what's at stake for Russia. Because of this alliance, NATO would most likely land its forces in this area. This is Gotland, Sweden's largest island. Located in the Baltic Sea, Gotland is of increasing critical security interest in Northern Europe. It sits approximately 60 miles from Sweden, 81 miles from the Baltic states, and 186 miles from Kaliningrad. This region, encompassing Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Germany, Poland, and Russia, is a vital economic hub and a major trade route, particularly reliant on the Danish Straits for Russian oil shipments. Due to its strategic location, experts believe that whoever controls Gotland during a conflict could gain dominance over the Baltic Sea, controlling crucial sea lanes and airspace. This island fortress could serve as NATO's best defense against an attack on its eastern flank from Russia. Gotland will also grant NATO warplanes and ships a forward operating base to conduct supply runs and attacks on Russian targets in the Baltic states. Before the strategic expansion of NATO to include Sweden and Finland, the Baltic states were a glaring vulnerability in the alliance's defenses. These nations, geographically isolated and connected to the rest of NATO only by the narrow Suwalki Gap, were ripe for Russian aggression. This perilous corridor, a mere 44 miles wide and traversing flat, easily defensible terrain, could be swiftly seized by Russian forces, effectively isolating the Baltics. A sobering 2016 RAND Corporation study predicted that Russia could overrun the Estonian and Latvian capitals within a mere 60 hours, leaving NATO scrambling to respond and potentially unable to liberate these occupied territories. However, the strategic landscape has shifted dramatically with Finland and Sweden deciding to join NATO. Together, they now present a formidable alliance. In an interview with the Financial Times in March 2024, the Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson said that bolstering Gotland is among the first things to discuss with NATO allies, highlighting Sweden's readiness to further fortify Gotland. But by far, it's clear now that the biggest nail in the coffin so far is the Russia-Finland border, Russia's longest point of vulnerability. Finland's membership in NATO basically doubles the alliance's land border with Russia, stretching it from 750 to 1,600 miles, and the blows to Russia don't end there. That's because NATO will be directly encroaching on this region, Kola Peninsula. Moscow views this peninsula as a crucial military stronghold. Bordering northern Norway and Finland, the region is home to the bulk of its navy. With NATO's dominance over both the northern and southern shores of the Gulf of Finland and the addition of Sweden to the alliance, Russia's Baltic fleet is rather choked. The Northern Fleet is a critical component of Russia's nuclear deterrents. The fleet boasts ballistic missile submarines capable of second-strike nuclear attacks and attack submarines and surface vessels designed to disrupt U.S. reinforcements to Europe. These stealthy submarines can prowl the icy depths of the Arctic Ocean and slip through the GI-UK gap to emerge in the North Atlantic, undetected and unchallenged. As Russia faces challenges in conventional warfare, demonstrated by the Ukraine conflict, it may increasingly rely on its nuclear arsenal, elevating the importance of the Kola Peninsula and its strategic assets. And to be honest, it already has. With the US and some NATO allies granting Ukraine permission to strike Russia with long-range missiles, Russia has already amended their nuclear doctrine and mean business. So, with NATO too close for comfort, its shared military intelligence and advanced sonar capabilities would pose a significant threat in the shallow waters of the Baltic Sea. This lethal combination makes it a breeze for NATO to monitor Russian naval movements in real time, effectively neutralizing the threat, as long as it isn't nuclear. That's a whole topic on its own for another video. But going back to the Kola Peninsula, in 2020, Putin elevated the Northern Fleet to an independent military administrative district, alongside Russia's 4 other military districts. This elevation underscores the strategic importance of the Kola Peninsula in the high north to Moscow. New docking facilities, infrastructure for submarines, and specialized loading and unloading facilities for nuclear warheads and ballistic missiles are being built at several of the peninsula's submarine bases to address operational limitations inherited from the Soviet-era Northern Fleet. These facilities serve as launch pads for the fleet's operations in the high north, a region NATO officials consider critical to Russia's defense strategy. The Northern Fleet's most potent assets are its approximately 20 operational submarines, many of which are nuclear-powered. So, the fleet's backbone consists of the advanced 4th-generation Bore-class and Yasen-class submarines. The Bore-class nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines are among Russia's most advanced, each capable of carrying 16 ballistic missiles, armed with up to 96 nuclear warheads. 2 Bore-class submarines are currently deployed with the Northern Fleet, with 3 more under construction and expected to join the fleet within the next decade. The first Yasen-class nuclear-powered guided missile submarine entered service in 2013, with its latest variant, the Yasen-M, commissioned last year. The Northern Fleet currently operates 2 Yasen-class submarines, with 3 more slated to join. Hell of a setup, if we're being honest. The Yasens are equipped with a combination of conventional cruise missiles capable of striking land and sea targets, including long-range weapons that NATO officials believe Russia could employ against ports and other critical infrastructure. The majority of the Northern Fleet's nuclear-powered submarines are stationed in its headquarters at Severomorsk, located on the Kola Bay. This is home to Russia's 3 air bases that host a significant portion of Russia's strategic bomber forces, including the Tu-160, one of the world's fastest bombers capable of supersonic speeds. These bombers can deliver nuclear payloads to most of Europe and North America by traversing the Arctic Circle. Recent upgrades to the Severomorsk 1 airbase will enhance the Russian military's situational awareness in the region and expand its operational reach as the Arctic becomes increasingly accessible. Additionally, there are submarine bases in Zaozyorsk, a mere 40 miles from Norway, Gadzievo on Olenia Bay, Zapadnaya Litsa, and Vidyayevo. The peninsula also houses the Plesetsk Cosmodrome, which is equipped with RS-24 Yars thermonuclear ballistic missiles. Furthermore, several air bases capable of supporting strategic bombers are also located there. Multiple nuclear ICBM launch facilities are scattered across the region, capable of striking any target in Europe or North America by traversing the Arctic Circle. In a nutshell, the peninsula is Russia's nuclear deterrents. But that's still not enough. A 2018 analysis of satellite imagery by the Barents Observer, a Norwegian outlet, revealed that Moscow is constructing 50 reinforced bunkers on the peninsula's Okolnaya Bay, Russia's largest weapons depot. These bunkers are designed to store long-range nuclear and conventional missiles. The Kola Peninsula is also a vital economic hub in the Arctic region. It's rich in natural resources, particularly minerals and fish, and is strategically located near the significant gas fields of the Barents Sea. This region is densely populated with major industrial centers, besides the substantial military infrastructure. Russia is an Arctic nation that's so vast, its northern border makes up 40% of the Arctic coastline, which happens to have another Russian asset located there, Murmansk. This is the largest city anywhere within the Arctic Circle and one of Russia's most significant ports, right on the Northern Sea route. This route is Russia's jugular vein, and the inclusion of Sweden and Finland in NATO is the equivalent of putting a knife to it. Russian cargo traffic uses this maritime corridor for transit of its goods. The emphasis on the Arctic is not solely military, but increasingly economic. Moscow views the Arctic as a strategic source of energy and natural resources and aims to continue its scientific research in the region. The transportation of oil and gas along the Northern Sea route continues uninterrupted and is a major source of trade for Russia. Look at this chart. Cargo volume along Russia's Arctic shipping lane exceeded the official target of 32 million tons by 2 million tons in 2022. This increase was primarily driven by the transportation of oil and gas from the Russian Arctic to European and Asian markets. In 2022, LNG transport along the route reached record levels, driven by Novatek's Yamal LNG plant's record production. Liquefied natural gas and gas condensate accounted for 20.5 million tons of cargo, followed by oil and petroleum products at 7.2 million metric tons. Coal and iron ore contributed 295,000 and 43,500 tons, respectively. General cargo made up 4.3 million tons. The Russian government allocated approximately $60 million for new developments along the Northern Sea route in 2022, while Russian energy giant Rosneft commenced construction of one of the world's largest oil loading terminals on May 21, 2024, aiming to ship up to 100 million tons of petroleum products by 2030. The initial phase of the port will feature 5 berths along an almost 1-mile-long dock. This project marks one of the world's largest oil developments in over a decade, sending a message the world is hearing loud and clear. Russia is going to guard its sea route, come what may. 6 dual-use military bases, a dozen airfields, and a fleet of at least 40 icebreakers, besides its multiple nuclear delivery systems, are only the beginning of this. The situation is already tense, with the region about to turn into a major flashpoint with NATO's recent launch of the Maritime Center for Security of Critical Undersea Infrastructure in May 2024. Now, Norway and Germany propose establishing regional hubs for critical undersea infrastructure in these key NATO maritime areas: the North Sea, Atlantic Ocean, Baltic Sea, Mediterranean Sea, and Black Sea. These hubs could be operated by individual NATO allies or groups of allies. Any such operation would be like lighting a match to this powder keg. At this point, Russia has almost lost its advantage to access through this corridor. With what's at stake for Russia, is it about to stand down and take a beating? Apparently not, judging by what former U.S. Second Fleet Commander Vice Admiral Dan Dwyer said during a Navy League conference last year. In his view, Russia considers the Arctic its #1 maritime priority, surpassing the Atlantic. He said that Moscow is prioritizing the Arctic as its most important maritime direction, pledging to protect these waters by all means. This includes increasing attention on the Arctic shelf, as well as the introduction of new missile capabilities. Open access to reinforcements are critical to both the defense and attack capability of a fighting force, which brings us to R21, a highway and railway line. It's the only, thus crucial, infrastructure corridor to Russia's supply chain for its ICBMs, strategic bombers, and the Northern Fleet, based on the Kola Peninsula. It's a critical vulnerability, in fact, Russia's Achilles heel. This vital lifeline stretches hundreds of miles, from beyond St. Petersburg and Moscow, through remote, sparsely populated regions, often running perilously close to the Finnish border. In a potential Russia-NATO conflict, Finnish or American special forces could exploit this vulnerability by infiltrating and disrupting the R21 corridor. By occupying or destroying sections of this highway and railway, they could effectively cut off the supply of essential goods and personnel to Russia's nuclear forces. Such a move would force Russia into a desperate situation, potentially leading to the use of nuclear weapons, or the loss of its strategic deterrent capability. Even if Russia is able to launch a nuclear attack in desperation, the effectiveness of Russian missiles against Western targets is uncertain, given the presence of advanced missile defense and early warning systems. These systems could not only intercept incoming missiles, but also provide a crucial window for a Western counterstrike. And Russia's response? Well, the Poseidon torpedo, which is the ace up its sleeve. This massive, nuclear-powered drone, capable of carrying a 100-megaton warhead, is designed to be launched from a new class of Russian nuclear submarines, the first of which, the Belgorod, was delivered to the Northern Fleet in July 2022. The Belgorod, stationed in the remote port of Severodvinsk on the White Sea, can discreetly navigate the Arctic Ocean to either the GIUK Gap in the west or the Bering Strait in the east. Once in position, it can launch the Poseidon torpedo. This underwater drone can literally travel thousands of miles on its own, detonating its massive warhead near coastal targets like New York or Los Angeles, triggering a devastating tsunami. But that's not the only trick Russia has in store. The Russian Dead Hand System, or Perimeter, is an automated nuclear retaliation mechanism designed to ensure a devastating response even if Russia's leadership and infrastructure are obliterated. If sensors detect nuclear explosions on Russian soil and communication with command is lost, the system can launch the entirety of Russia's nuclear arsenal automatically. This doomsday device guarantees mutual destruction, capable of annihilating the planet. It serves as a chilling deterrent, embodying the terrifying logic of total nuclear war. You know what that means? Game over. It's a pretty unlikely scenario, but the way the world is shaping these days, it's hard to really understand where we're headed. But with Finland joining NATO and the possibility of hosting American military bases, Russia's ability to threaten the West with conventional nuclear delivery systems like missiles and bombers could possibly be compromised. But that doesn't account for the Poseidon missile and Dead Hand system, unfortunately. These unconventional weapons are basically Russia's last resort for strategic deterrence. For decades, Finland's relations with Russia had been based on reciprocal trust, with an emphasis on Moscow's faith that Finland was not part of any secret conspiracy. Helsinki will now need to redefine that core principle and rebuild the relationship with Russia, if it so chooses. This redefinition looks like accepting NATO policy as Finland's Russia policy. There is one constant in this evolving scenario, though. This NATO membership would be for Finland's defensive purposes only. It remains uncertain how deep the Finns will get into this new relationship, as this could further escalate tensions with Russia, who's already pretty agitated at the moment. Currently, Russia has expressed significant concern over the Ukraine conflict, particularly following the US decision to permit Ukraine's use of long-range missiles within Russian territory. The recent defense cooperation agreement between Finland and the United States, signed on December 18, 2023, grants US forces access to 15 Finnish military sites, including air bases and training areas. While this agreement enhances military collaboration, it does not establish permanent US bases in Finland just yet. Nonetheless, such developments are likely to heighten tensions with Russia, which perceives increased NATO presence near its borders as a direct threat. What's to come? Only time will tell. And so will the next few years of the Donald Trump presidency. There's quite a lot of changes coming to the world. We'll have to wait and see together, right here on Republic. Enjoyed the video? Make sure you're subscribed and hit the thumbnail to watch more brain-stirring content. See you soon.